it was really nice. It was really nice. The police department really does a good job on
They had
stuff.
a hypnotist, Rob.
Oh, really?
By the time that got done though, John was just going, oh man, my head's aching. But it was really fun.
Eventually you gotta take some
Hey,
action,
Sharon?
you know?
City's website's not showing another planning commission meeting this month, is that correct?
24/7 work. Doesn't always help.
I thought we
We
had,
have another planning commission on the 24th.
Yeah.
It's just not showing up on the calendar.
Oh, really?
Yeah, on the city's calendar.
I hadn't looked. I assumed we did.
Yeah, I didn't see one either. Do we have one, Mike, on the 24th?
It's on the public meeting schedule.
Oh, you mean it's not on the website? Oh, yeah, let me, yeah, but it is on our public meeting schedule. That's what
Yeah,
I
I
was
didn't.
concerned about.
I hadn't even checked, I'm sorry. I just
How many
assumed it was on there.
Sharon, we're gonna be out of town for that one.
Email address. Lindon City.
I don't know. I just assumed it was,
I believe.
I don't know, I just thought it was my personal one. I don't know.
Somebody said, I sent it to you. I'm in Lindon City. Okay.
That's what I think.
Look at me, I've got chocolate all over me now.
Sharon,
No, I haven't. Uh-huh,
I will be out of town for that next week.
Yes.
That's why I was checking to see if it was there.
okay. I hadn't even double checked, I just assumed we had it then.
Yeah, I've been checking, I haven't seen it, but
Yeah, yeah. You know, we're let's wait one more minute and then we ought to go ahead and start, huh? Don't you think?
I have one.
We have a quorum. We have 4 of us.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah. I was looking at 3.
Chocolate all over me. It's a good thing nobody can see all the stuff I goobered over.
but at least you gotta say it.
Mike, are you? It's 6 o'clock. Do you want us to go ahead and start? Okay. We'd like to welcome you to our Planning Commission meeting this evening. This is Planning Commission meeting for January 10th, 2023, and we welcome all of you that are here with us. This meeting is being recorded. We're going to begin our meeting this evening with an opening prayer by Commissioner Callis and a pledge of allegiance by Commissioner Thompson.
Our gracious Father in heaven, we bow our heads before the commencement of this Lindon City Planning Commission meeting and give thanks to Thee for the many blessings Thou hast given us. We're thankful for this past year and all of the progress that our community has made. We're thankful for a new year and for the opportunity to serve and to try to better our community for another year. We pray that as we do so, we'll have Thy Spirit with us, that we'll always make decisions that are best for the bulk of the city, residents, and the city itself. We pray for those that are not here, that they might travel quickly to get here, and we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Would the audience please rise and join me in the pledge of allegiance? Ready? Begin.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated.
Okay, we'll begin our meeting this evening with an audible roll call of the commissioners. Sharon Call here, Mike Marchbanks. Not here yet. Jared Showers,
Here.
Rob Callis,
Here?
Stephen Johnson,
Here.
Scott Thompson,
Here.
Renee Tribe. Oh, there she is. Okay. And the next item on our agenda This would be a time for approval of the minutes. These are for the minutes clear back on December 13th,
That was last year.
2022. Yeah, it seems like a long time ago. Commissioners have received those minutes ahead of time, had a chance to review those. Are there any changes or corrections to the minutes?
Nope.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
I'll
Motion-
second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the voting is unanimous. Okay, the next item on our agenda, item number 3, this is a time for public comment. This would be for any items that are not on the agenda, already on the agenda for this evening. Anyone here for that purpose? Okay, item number 4, this is an application for FAR Sport Court setback modification at 28 South, 250 West. Our applicant is Andy Farr. Is that you? If you want to come on up to the front. There should be a place for you to sign. Okay, and our presenting staff is Mary Barnes, and we'll let you go ahead. And Commissioner Marchbanks has just joined us.
All right, thank you. So this application is for a sports court setback modification for the FAR property at 28 South, 250 West. The applicant built this pickleball slash basketball court in 2020. Let me zoom in a bit. In the south corner of his property. Here we are. All right. According to Lindon City Code 1744-150, outdoor sports courts must maintain a 30-foot setback from front property lines unless the Planning Commission modifies that setback requirement. This sports court is about 12 feet 5 inches to 12 feet 3 inches away from 250 West and then 21 to 24 feet away from 40 South. Therefore, the applicant is requesting a sports court setback modification from the Planning Commission to allow this existing sport court to come into compliance with a reduced setback. So Lindon City Code 1744-150 states that the Planning Commission may modify the setback requirement to be less than 10 feet when the application meets these 4 requirements. First, the proposed setback modification is necessary to provide privacy and protection of private property interests. So this court is approximately 100 feet from the closest dwelling, and it actually borders a Rocky Mountain power facility to the west. If anything, it would be blocking the view of those power lines from these eastern neighbors. Second, the appearance and setback of the fence will not detract or cause aesthetic damage to neighboring property owners. Here are a few pictures. Since its construction in 2020, staff has not received any complaints, code enforcement complaints about this sports court. Finally, it cannot create a public safety hazard. The only hazard that this could have possibly created has to do with the clear view. As you know, anything on a corner must meet a 40-foot clear view triangle to ensure that there's nothing obstructing the view of motorists. This does meet that, so it does not constitute a public safety hazard. Motorists are able to see around the corner of the sports court while they're turning onto 250 West or onto 40 South. Oh, and then there's a requirement about additional height, but that isn't necessary in this application. Although this sports court was built without initial Planning Commission approval, this oddly shaped lot does not allow for many other productive uses. A sports court may be the best use for this strange front corner that Mr. Farr has going on here. The setback modification in the code was intended to be for rear and side yard setbacks. The code language states that the rear and side property lines have a minimum 10-foot setback for sports courts. and the modification section allows the setback to be less than 10 feet. Although it isn't expressly stated that this doesn't apply to a front setback, staff has always assumed that a modification wouldn't be allowed for a front setback because structures are generally not built in a front setback. However, we've spoke with our city attorney, Brian Halls, about this, and he felt that the code language was general enough that it would allow the planning commission to modify this setback for Mr. Farr. In the future, the city may want to amend the code to ensure that no other sports courts could be built in a front setback with the exception of irregularly shaped lots like this one. Any other questions for me or Mr. Farr?
Why was this, why are we doing this retroactively? Why wasn't that applied for?
Just not
Thanks, Rob.
noticed,
What
or,
prompted it?
The home's for sale, I'm assuming.
yeah, the home is for
It's
sale,
for
I
sale.
noticed that.
That's what prompted it.
Are you the current owner then?
I am the current owner, yes.
I think that Mary had a potential buyer come in
Yeah.
and talk to her, asking
Concerned.
if everything was in conformance, and the setback was brought up.
And I said no because of this.
And it wasn't done because you just didn't
Um,
think about doing it, or?
To me, that doesn't even come close to having an issue versus some of the sports courts that I've seen in the area, or fences in the area, or other things that are way worse of a visual problem aesthetically than that. That didn't even cross my mind as something that would even, I mean, essentially, if I tear that fence down, it's a concrete pad. I can put a concrete pad on the side of my yard, so it's the fence that essentially brings the into question. If
Can you build a sports court without a building permit?
Yes, you can build a sports court without a building permit because it's a pad, but the you cannot build a fence that is that tall without
You know,
a building
I
permit.
doubt that you would have had much resistance here is what
I actually would have totally showed up and paid my whatever dollars. It didn't even cross my mind that that was even close to even having an issue. I get it if it's 1 or 2 foot off the back of the walk, or up to the intersection where it may be a visual problem with the intersection. It's just not, it doesn't meet any of those things of a problem.
It wasn't even on your radar, and that's why you just went ahead with it.
It
Right.
didn't even cross my mind. It would be like throwing concrete on the side of my house for a RV pad that meets
Right.
exactly, it just doesn't make sense at all as to why I'm even here. I get it, and I'm
We
sorry.
understand why he's here, but, and we're trying to correct it.
Yeah, let's just make it, make them compliant.
And get going with the sale of this property.
I appreciate that. Because I'm here, I would like to make some kind of amendment for something going forward for anyone that has this kind of issue, because now I get it, Lindon is not Orem, but right off of 2000 North, there's a house that literally has a sports court on the property line with a fence 12 foot tall, backed up against the sidewalk, facing forward on the front part of the property. Now, I get that Lindon is not Orem, and we have a little bit of country, but there is this thing that we're trying to do.
I know it's Orem's codes, and I don't think that would be in their code either. So.
Yeah,
I don't think that's been approved by Orem City.
well, no, I mean, that sports court's probably 25 years old. I would hope that someone going forward that wants to build a sports court, there should be something of less of a tolerance than even that. Maybe a 5 foot, maybe a visual thing for an intersection. I'm looking out for the next guy that doesn't have to come sit to a meeting that just doesn't make sense. And, you know,
The issue, though, is that it is in the front setback, you know, if it were on the side or in
Sure.
the back. But I think that is the whole issue, is we don't want people just putting sports courts with that high of fences anywhere in their front setback.
yeah,
So, and like Mary said, we may want to look at, you know, not allowing it in the front setback, or, you know, just what we want to do so someone doesn't run up against this again.
yeah, and I understand that. But as oddly shaped as my lot is, really everything is a front.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
Yeah, and
it's.
I drove down there, so
yeah,
I know
that-
what it looks like, yeah.
My father and I developed the property. I took that lot because we knew it was gonna be an oddly shaped lot and very hard to sell. I did the most aesthetic thing I think I could possibly do to make it,
It
you
looks
know,
very nice.
right,
yeah.
for the neighborhood, and so I like that. But if someone else down the future had a similar situation, I would hope that they could even do it closer to the sidewalk than 12 and a half feet. And I did it because it fit more in the piece of property that I have. If my property was more narrow, I probably would have pushed it toward the sidewalk, which I may have had a bigger problem here. But the next guy, I would hope, could do it up to 5 feet or something, as long as it doesn't hurt
Create the
traffic.
visual problems.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, we'll have to look at that, because, you know, in the staff's recommendation, they're saying, with the exception of irregularly shaped
Sure.
lots. So we'll have to look at that, but as far as, how does the commission feel about,
You know, I've gotta
yes.
say, I watched the whole thing be built and it did not even cross my mind.
Yeah.
yeah,
That any, you know, and so there are circumstances where I'm glad that we have the ability to let common sense prevail and move forward. And I, you know, to me, the only issue I would even been looking at there is to make sure that it had good, clear view.
visual.
Yeah.
Coming around that corner and getting out, and I go in and out of there almost every day, and it's, like I say, it never even crossed my
Let me
mind.
ask you this,
Andy,
if I wanted to
given
build
your
it,
background, that crossed your mind too.
Thank you, Renee. Yeah, so that was actually I was a police officer in Lindon. I understand the laws with visuals and stop signs and things. That was actually that's why you'll see it 25-ish feet back from there, because I know that's the visual point of where a vehicle can be parked from a stop sign. That was more why it's pulled that way more. I made real efforts to say, oh, visually, you gotta pull up, you gotta stop, you gotta look. Oh, they have 20 feet of visuals, they can look. But the east and west, or the setbacks from the sidewalk, didn't even, you know,
Well, and the
Maybe
fact
I'll
that
leave it
it's-
at that,
That it's
yeah.
a chain, you know, it's
Chain link,
it's
it's-
That's right.
Yeah,
You
it's
see
clear.
through completely through the court.
Yeah.
You know, it's absolutely not caused anything but a beautification of an awkward lot. is what
Yes.
it's done.
Well, I think as far as tonight, what we're doing is just, you know, saying that it's
The
okay
process.
to have that there, and as far as our current ordinance.
could I finish asking one
Yeah,
question?
go
If
ahead.
I was living on that lot, I wanted to build a fence out to the road, I'd have to drop it to 3 feet, right?
You would, unless you, we have a system in the code that allows us to modify fence requests like that, and so you'd have to talk to Noah, the city engineer, and Mike, the planning
Right.
director, if you wanted to raise it above 3 feet. So technically, you could go to like 6 feet.
I'm not so concerned about his fence up to the top, but what I am concerned is that, let's say you sell the house,
yeah,
and the buyer decides, I'm gonna put the green mesh on the 12-foot fence. Now, all of a sudden, you do have a blind spot. So I think as we make this motion, we should put something in there that it cannot have visual mesh or something like that on it for that. Is it 30 feet back?
It's
and
40.
So as long as they stay out of the clear view.
The clear view.
Then they could put the mesh on it. And I don't know if you need to put it as a motion. We would probably, if a mesh went up, we would, you know, just to.
We try to be on
double check
top
that,
of those things.
and
So,
it'd already be in the code, so I think you're okay.
Rob, on 60 North, 100 North and 400 West, the Chad Froughton property, his fence is 2 foot off the back of the walk, 8 feet tall. Now, I get he may have had, I know him and he probably snuck something in that maybe was not caught in something. Fair enough. Chad did his thing. However, there is a visual thing that he needed as it comes to the corner, which he puts the slotted fence so that you could see for visual. That is way more obstructive than any fence,
Did
even
you
if
not hear
mine
what
was
I said?
covered.
I said you didn't have a problem with visual.
Even
But I'm
if I did,
concerned
though.
about the future. If somebody put a 14 or a 12 foot, was it?
Yeah.
Mesh up, it would become a visual.
Well, it's still far enough back, Rob, I
Only
don't.
Yeah, that-
27 feet.
Huh?
Only 20.
Well, no, but, because of the front yard. is
Yeah.
what you're- Yeah.
Well,
I understand that
The-
part of it.
the Clearview triangle, sorry, Andy, let me just let you know. The Clearview triangle, if you see right here, is that front of walk. So it's measured from the center point between these two intersecting lines. You put a center point there and you measure 40 feet back and then 40 feet back and then across. So it's far outside of the 40-foot
It is,
Clearview triangle
Even
already.
if it was covered?
So even if it was
Okay,
covered, you'd be good.
there you go. I was only bringing that up because you were bringing that up, so, okay.
Well, I think as far as tonight, go ahead, sir.
Let me make a comment. I live across the street. You can see my house right at the bottom there.
And what is your name, sir?
This one?
Douglas Olson.
Okay. Uh-huh.
And if you're worrying about visual safety as you come out of Andy's street, you have a bigger problem looking to the left or going to the east. Because the way it's landscaped and you're coming down the crest of a hill,
And the fence.
looking to the west is a piece of cake compared to looking the other way. So it's
Okay.
not a visual
Okay,
problem there at all.
okay. Thank you for your comment. Appreciate that.
Can I just ask one question about sports courts in general? And this
Go ahead,
really
Steve.
does, to me, one of the bigger issues, and I don't know if our ordinance addresses this, would be the lighting from these.
Yeah.
And that lighting pollution to neighbors. And I don't know,
It says, lighting of sports courts shall be contained within the sport court boundaries and shall not be directed onto another's property. And I added that in the motion, just that sport court lighting will not shine into another's property.
and that's standard on all sports courts citywide.
And-
And I'm not worried about it, but that's just one of my bigger,
That was also one of the things that I put those on that side because I knew that power substation, they don't care about light at 10 o'clock at night
Right.
playing
Obviously.
pickleball. So, which is the best neighbor in the world, and that light going that way, that's why I did it.
Right.
The person most affected would be Doug, and I hope you're not that mad at me. But long story short, it does just go into the sports court, and I think that it's just perfect.
Let me continue on here without breaking permission, thank you. It's not a lighting problem. I can't remember any time Andy's friends, relatives have been there past 10:30.
Okay,
And the parking, they've never parked anywhere but on Andy's property when family or friends or whatever. So it's just not been an issue at all for any of
but
us.
we hope it stays that way with new owners. Yeah.
Yes, I do too. If, I am interested in thinking about keeping the house, if I could sublet that out to the city as a city pickleball court, because I've had more people thinking it was a city pickleball court than it was an actual private court. I would love to.
That's a whole different issue.
Okay.
That's something we wouldn't even touch tonight.
Just my joke. Yeah, I literally though, city court, and I'm like, no, sir. But anyway,
Well, I think we'll go ahead with this. I think we've had plenty of discussion on it. As far as the way the ordinance is right now and with the irregular shaped lot and, you know, all those discussions we've had, I don't have any other problems. Are we
I'm ready to
for
make a motion. Is that okay?
Yes,
I move to approve the applicant's request to modify the sports court setback requirements found in 17.44.150 for the property located at 28 South, 250 West, with the following conditions. A, the sport court lighting will not shine into another's property, and B, all items of the staff report.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I second that.
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the voting is unanimous.
I appreciate you guys.
All right, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Awesome.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is a discussion item. This is for the commercial design standards update. And I understand that we have a representative here, but Mike, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so this portion of the meeting's meant to be a little more interactive, and we'll be going through the presentation on the screen. I don't know if you would prefer to sit down here, or if you can see that just fine, or whatever, or
I
you've
can
got it
see-
on your computer as well, so
Yeah.
whatever you'd prefer to do.
I think we're fine.
Okay, we've invited the mayor and Councilwoman Powell to be here tonight as well as a part of our design, commercial design committee. So with that, I'm going to turn the time over to Mary, and then we'll turn the time over to CRSA.
Awesome, thank you. So just a quick intro and an update review about what has been going on since our kickoff meeting last year. So we signed a contract with CRSA in March of last year to update and rewrite the commercial design standards for Lindon City. An initial meeting was held with the Commercial Design Standards Committee in April last year, and using those comments, they came up with a preference survey that they gave to planning commissioners and city council members at the kickoff meeting, which was in May of last year. Since then, consultants and staff have spent all that interim time reviewing, refining, and updating those standards. We've gone through multiple variations, and in order to produce this rough draft today, and I want to make sure you know that it is rough, there are going to be mistakes, but any mistakes you point out, that's great, and we can use that feedback to move ahead. I wanted to go through the goals of these standards real quick, which are on the introduction sheet of this rough draft. So we need these standards. Oh, you can't see them? Okay. Let me zoom in a little more. Here you are. So we need these standards to show clear development objectives for the architects and engineers that are looking to build in this community. We want these standards to help enhance the character of Lindon City, create beautiful places, foster innovative design through site design treatments that enhance visual appearance of the buildings. The architectural, we need to ensure these designs are more, ensure that the buildings are more cohesive and attractive, and therefore increase the economic viability of the city. And these new standards should affect growth in a positive manner, using appropriate massing, scale, materials, colors, and ensuring new buildings fit into the context of the established commercial neighborhoods, while also creating new commercial neighborhoods that look attractive, like on 700 North. These standards are intended to encourage a sense of place through the building articulation, the streetscape design, and other design treatments. Like I said, this is a rough draft, but I will turn the time over to the consultants so they can go ahead and present that to us.
And I'll just, Kelly Gilman, he was here, about 4 or 5 months ago?
Yeah.
And did our first meeting with us, and then Anna Foster is also a CRSA, so. Thank you for the introduction. Nice to see you all again today. So what I'm going to do is briefly walk you through the general format of the document, just so you can see what we put together for you, and then come back and go through it in a little bit more detail. Because this is a draft, as was mentioned, you may see things that you're not sure if you like or not. And if so, make a note of that. The goal, we will answer questions for you today, but we think the best way for us to address the next draft will be to gather all those questions at once so that we can review them in tandem with each other. Some of the metrics that you see may ripple through the document. And so the last thing I want to do is comment too closely on one item and then realize that we need to make a change somewhere else. But we'll do our best to answer your questions. Feel free to jump in the middle if you'd like. And there's a couple of things I'd like you to keep in mind. One would be, as planning commissioners are going to be enforcing this document, you can think about if the tool that we've provided for you will help you with that task or not. And two, if you happen to be a developer or no developers, you can think about if you think this will help them have clarification of what the city is trying to ask them to do to meet the city's vision. So those are the main items to think about. So just so we're oriented, this is meant to apply to the all general commercial areas within the city, which right now primarily apply to the 700 North corridor and the State Street corridor. And then there are a couple of larger property areas, that what we call the town center piece and the 400 North piece. And that purple and pink area, as you go through the document, you'll see that those two areas have, in some cases, some slightly different metrics applied to them than the general corridors do. Reason being is they are, per your general plan, designed to have a little bit different look and feel than the general corridors. So therefore, they may merit different metrics for commercial guidelines. And real quick, if I can add one other thing. Our general plan consultant is also, how we've carved out a little 400 North node right there. They're also proposing that maybe we do that at 700 North and State, and then 200 South and State as well. And so we may apply these same 400 North standards to those other two locations if we feel it's appropriate as well.
So they're on the general corridor, but they would have an additional,
Yeah. And we'll talk about that, a little bit higher standard, a little bit closer to the street, creating a kind of an iconic area on those three nodes.
those are kind of gateway.
Yeah.
So Second South, 400 North, and where else did you say?
Second South, 400 North, and 700 North.
On State.
State Street, yeah.
And then the town center.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
yeah.
Clarification. I'm going to back up to the table of contents just so you can see how we've organized this document. Mary went through most of the introduction already. We have broken up the various components of the standards into different chapters, which we hope will make it a little bit easier for developers to decipher and for you to review the applications. So talking about the placement of the building on the site will be the first piece, the overall, as you seek to understand the applications, the overall placement of the building on the site. And then we move into the massing of the building, how much mass that development takes on the site. We're currently not prepared to talk about entries into the buildings just yet. That's something that, based on what we hear from you, we'll come back and fill in a little bit later. As well as the activated ground floor. That refers to what's happening inside the windows of that ground floor facade. And that, depending on what we decide to do, may or may not be as an important part of this guideline. Articulation of the building. So how the facades, either on the front or side, setback, are they flat? Do they have some articulation to them or not. 6 is materiality, which is what material and what colors and materials should be required on the building. And then we're not currently showing lighting, outdoor spaces, or signage. Those are some areas that signage we probably will not get into in this plan. It's a placeholder for now. And then administration will be a little bit of language just needed to make sure that this falls in line with the rest of the city code. So that's the general outline. So jumping into placement, I'm going to zoom in on this just a little bit. What we wanted to do was make sure that this document didn't cause any confusion, first and foremost, with other codes that are in the city. And so what we've done is we've pulled in some of the zone designations that already exist in the city that pertain to commercial, and we've grouped them with some of the new designations that we're talking about. So the 400 North, Lindon Village Town Center, Lindon Village. And this way, hopefully you can go to just this one document and get a good snapshot of how this applies across all of the commercial zones in the city. So you'll see those headings throughout the document. And it's feasible that if additional areas are added, as Mike alluded to, that those could be either lumped in with existing or added to this chart as well if they have different metrics. So we go through and step through some of the general placement requirements in this chapter. For example, where the building sits on the property, and so we have some exhibits here that help to describe what we're trying to regulate here. So width of the building versus the width of the lot, for example. In this case, referring back to current zoning, there is not a specific width of the lot requirement in some of these zones, but in the town center and 400 North, we've suggested a certain percentage of width of principal building to width of lot. And why this is 60% versus 70% is probably not something we have to cover specifically right now, but we have provided a little bit different metric in some of these zones for various reasons that we can talk about those a little bit later. So we have, as example, placement. We've got some additional information here about how the placement of the building is different if you're on a primary corner lot. We have some front setback information, corner setback and minimum side yard setback information, not unlike what we were talking about with the gentleman and the sport court, but this applies to commercial areas, of course, not residential. And these graphics and these metrics are meant to give the developer some clarity on what you're looking for. Minimum rear yard setback is included. And we have some additional guidance here for minimum and maximum lot width, front facade orientation, drive-through placement. And then what we've done is we've consolidated all of those individual items onto one table for quick reference. So if you noticed, we started with 1.1, this is chapter 1, we started with 1.1, went through 1.10, and then all those end up in one table at the end of that chapter for summary. So as a new user of the document, you'll probably find yourself reading those individual sections. Once you've gotten used to it a little bit more, you can refer to that table and pretty quickly get a sense of if the applicant is meeting the intent of the guidelines or not. So just for clarification on my sake too, so these would have, all these standards here would apply to 400 North and the Village Town Center. If you're just building something else in the general commercial zone, you'll just meet our current requirements of a 20-foot setback, minimum, just normal standards like we do, we review all the time. Yep, and so we've provided the reference to that table in the code so you can check back there. We did talk about copying those standards here. which we could do, but the concern I have is if one gets changed and we might forget to change it in the other document, then we've got a bit of a compliance issue between the two documents. So for now, we've just referred to that other table here to ensure we don't get into some trouble with that issue. And then for now, we've got some pictures here, and these may or may not be the best pictures for the final document. We've tried to pick images that generally depict the guidance that we're asking for in the particular chapter. So you might look at one of these pictures and maybe it does meet the front property line requirement, but it might not meet a requirement somewhere else in a different chapter because we haven't quite tied that up yet. So if you happen to see some of those issues as you're reviewing the document, let us know. But we tried to provide a little bit of a caption as to which facet of the plan we're trying to show in the picture. And that general format of that chapter is what you'll see through the rest of the chapters. So we start with, we'll go to the massing chapter, we start with the general values and standards, what we're trying to accomplish in the chapter. And then we jump into the individual metrics that we're trying to regulate. So in this case, 2.1 and 2.2 are minimum structure height and maximum structure height. And again, depending on which commercial area you're in, there's a slightly different metric. And we have a little chart that shows how we're defining and measuring those metrics. So for example, minimum structure height shows to the top of that first 2 or 3 floors. Maximum structure height, if there happens to be a setback on an upper floor, would measure that high point on the setback area. We do have some metrics for how high the first floor should be versus the upper stories. Just for your information, generally speaking, we recommend the first floor to be taller than the upper floors, and that's for development of a stronger retail environment. So those retailers will want to have more space for better lighting, for exhibits, and so forth, whereas the upper floors are generally office or residential space, and those don't need quite as much upper floor space. We are showing the floor heights for the CG through MC here. Those should be a replica of your existing, right? So we need to talk about if we want to keep those replicated here or just refer to the other table. Then we go through upper story setbacks. And again, this is a feature that we recommend that gives some developers a little bit more flexibility without impacting the streetscape quite as much. We know that the taller the building becomes, sometimes the more concern you have from neighbors or residents. Having that upper floor set back a little bit makes the scale of the building feel a little bit smaller. It actually can provide some upper level balcony space as well, and can give that developer some flexibility. Sometimes you need more floor height for your project to pencil out, depending on the size of the lot. So that's a feature that is recommended to help with that type of issue. So I think this would have been a good requirement to have with the training room building that we just reviewed in December. So the first story, so that you don't get just one massive tall building, it would have been like the second story of that building, according to this draft, would have set back 6 feet. So you would have created that kind of retail look on the front, and then the second story would have set back a little bit.
Yep. Yeah, would look good.
And because we have these laid out by kind of district type, we can customize those a little bit. So if one area, a 3-story building feels okay, then we can adjust that upper floor setback to only be the 4th floor, but maybe that's needs to happen after the 1st floor in some other districts, so we can customize that.
Mike, remind me, did that building have 3 stories to it?
No, it only had 2.
Yeah.
So I misread that just now. You're right.
Okay, yeah, because that wouldn't have applied anyway.
But it could be,
It
if
could
that's what
if we
you
wanted
wanted to do.
But I think it's reasonable to look at it from above the 2nd story.
Mhm. Yep.
Gets a little much if we force it on the 2nd story.
Correct.
It does create a little construction issue when you're not using the outside wall as your strength support.
That's true. You would generally set it back to the first column, bay of columns.
Right.
And that could be 30 feet.
For some types of buildings, it could, and that's something that may require some adjustment in here as we look at it.
But because of that, Rob, don't you think we wouldn't look at that only from the third story up to possibilities?
I've seen that.
I mean, it can be done on a second story, but that gets a little much.
5 stories or higher.
Yeah.
I have a question on this. So in looking at some other design guideline centers that other communities have done where they had some attractive results, I saw this addressed more in the category of massing as well, but they kind of put together a step back was an option along with other vertical separation techniques.
Yeah.
So massing was, step back wasn't necessarily required in all instances, but it was one of the tools in the toolbox. You could have, a cornice trim, you could have lintels, you could have a step back, so they
Yeah.
could
Yeah, no, that's a good point. We could, in the articulation section, we could have an option for a horizontal band or separation of some kind between that second and third floor as another option to the setback. That's a possibility.
This is one that I read, so this could be the vertical, so just what it was calling out was a vertical separation in human scale, which I think is the goal here. But then it gave options such as the step back, but also the mid facade cornice or trim, a change in material, style, or color, a facade step back, or roof pitch with dormer windows or other methods. So, and then it called out, like, if it went above 2 stories, like we are here, then it should also exhibit additional architectural articulation in human scale.
Yeah, that's an option we can look at as well.
I have a question.
Mhm.
When they do that setback on a third floor, can they use that for like an outdoor patio, balcony, and,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They could.
You could, if you were to allow that, you could, yes.
Do we allow that? We do. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just think that's a really nice use for some of those office buildings, if they're going to be used for that, or an event center or something like that.
Yep, absolutely. And then we've got the consolidated guidelines all in one table again at the end of the massing chapter. With using the same format, some sample pictures of what the massing may look like when implemented. So again, here, although you see some nice materials in the picture, and hopefully those materials will end up being representative of what you're encouraging in the design guidelines, these are meant to show massing, not necessarily materials. So you can look through those as you have some time to review them. Articulation, here, the goal is primarily for the pedestrian environment, having a frontage that is active and adding activity to the street. And so we have minimum transparency requirements, slightly varied per district on how much of the building you need to have that you could see into. And that typically is going to be higher at the ground level and then a little bit lower on the upper levels as you move into office space and residential space. We do have some blank wall limitations, the facade discussions. The thing that we're trying to be careful of here is certain architectural styles naturally ask for or less solid wall, right? Some styles like to have narrow windows, others like to have wider windows. So there's some language here to try and allow some flexibility to the architect without violating the standards. So you want to read through that. And the other factor is, of course, if you have elevators and staircases and utility rooms, those generally want to be behind solid walls as well. So we're trying to walk that line between the right amount of transparency and what you just need to make the building function versus architectural style. So take some time to look through that as well. Vertical facade divisions, this gets to some of what the mayor was mentioning, how many and how often we require that building to be broken up, either horizontally or vertically. If it's the horizontal facade, it may be that you can step the building back for a little while, and then it bumps back out again, just to give some articulation to the building, going top to bottom, and then there may be cornices or changing of materials, and we may need to adjust those a little bit. And then parapet and roof styles are also addressed in this section, and we have some example graphics on what we're trying to get at with the different roof styles. So the roof height, depending on what type of style you're using, might be a little bit different. Significant roof articulations is something to look at, and kind of falling into that category are towers. It may be that you have a 3-story building height max, but you might be okay with maybe a clock tower on the corner of the building, or in the middle somewhere as a standalone feature, but you wouldn't want that for the entire facade of the building. And that may be something you're okay with, so you can look at that and see how you feel about that. And then we've got a number of different entrance types, and this may need some more review as well as you take a look at it. What we're trying to accomplish here is ensuring that the building looks approachable and does have a usable entrance on the front, or at least the main facade. That can be a little bit challenging when we're on these busy commercial streets. Sometimes having the main entrance right onto the street isn't as desirable as having it on the parking lot side. But how that is set up can really influence how the building looks and feels to the overall district. And then, again, all that is summarized in one table at the end of the articulation chapter. So, for example, entry type, storefront arcades to porch cover, they're actually allowed in every commercial section right now. But we could customize that, and you may want to decide that some of those aren't as desirable in some sections as others. But at least you can see right now how it's set up. And then we have some pictures of, again.
This is gonna be great. Have a table and.
So it's really helpful to see how articulation is varied. For example, the planes of the building are set back from some of the corner elements, but there's also these awnings and horizontal, it's awning as well, basically, but it's just a little bit different form and shape, and then those do a lot to provide the building a little bit of unique character. Materiality, again, we're looking at the types of materials and how much of those materials should be on the building. We're distinguishing between primary facade materials and secondary materials. So as an example, in Lindon Village, the primary material, which might be brick, would be about 70%, and the secondary material, which might be stone or concrete block, would be 30%. So you got that 70 to 30% ratio of primary to secondary in that particular zone.
So that would be higher than our current standards. Our current standards are 60-40. So, just so you can relate those, you can see the 60-40 and the other, keeping that in the general commercial zones. But then the 400 North and Lindon Village are higher.
Yeah, so if these are meant to be a little bit higher standard because they're a more high profile development, then we've increased that primary material by just a little bit to try and boost the quality of that development. Colors, of quantity of colors per elevation. Right now in all districts we have a minimum of 3 distinct colors. And I think we've got it, correct me if I'm wrong, Anna, but the color could be just the natural difference of the material. Also, it could be a painted color. Is that right? Yeah.
What about corporate colors? Does that play into it all? Like, for example, Home Depot, bright orange doesn't fit, but it's their corporate color, or doTERRA wanted the purple.
Holiday oils.
Or, you know, how do we deal with corporate colors? Rather than telling them, you can't use your corporate colors, you have to use.
And it's not a sign you're asking about, is it actually like painted on the building?
Painted on the building itself is a corporate color.
Like the Wiggy Wash bright, or not Wiggy Wash, Quick Quack.
Yeah.
The bright green and white.
Yellow.
So I don't believe we've addressed that as of yet, so that's a great point. we were going to recommend a general color table of kind of complementary colors, but we would need to talk about that factor.
The what I call corporate colors.
Correct, yep.
What are your thoughts right now, so we can get some direction on that?
Well, I think it's pretty important for them that they pick their colors and they're trying to really work so that people recognize them from a distance and they see it. So I think it'd be hard to encourage like a Home Depot to come in and say, oh, but you can't use orange. You have to use one of our muted colors because you're in Linden.
Well, Alpine required Quick Quack to use different colors.
Well,
Right.
lots of Walmarts have been redesigned to fit.
I think it's
Other
a good
cities
consideration,
design
but I don't think we should say they always can use
You
it.
can always do it, right? I mean, we should have input, but I mean,
But there's a difference between signage and building color, right? They can still have the signage.
correct.
Their
Signage,
corporate colors.
right. I'm just saying we just had like doTERRA's one we had recently where
It's true.
we ended up and they came back and they wanted to put purple on the side of their building.
Yeah, we had that discussion.
But they did have to make some modifications. so-
Right. I mean, I'm just saying we just need to, when we get into this,
Yeah,
we need
no,
to
it's a
give
great
some
point.
thought. We just need to give some
And
thought on
And I'm
corporate
still
colors.
not sad that Holiday Oil toned the color of their roof down. You know, they said they couldn't, no, that's the color every Holiday Oil roof has to be, and yet when they came back, they had done it a different color of red, so that it was more in line with what we wanted.
The one thing
It's
to
not a
keep,
good-looking building. Sorry, it's not.
Because
I
of the
didn't-
color of the orientation.
Yeah, and just their whole color scheme is funky. I mean, that's on them, but I do think we gotta be careful of our branding. Companies put a lot of money into their branding and their imaging. And we don't wanna be a deterrent that they to come participate here because they can't use something that's recognizable to their clientele,
So
the
there's-
customers.
there's a couple of situations. One you're talking about a single tenant building versus some of these buildings which are multiple tenant buildings.
Oh, true.
And so I think we're primarily talking about a single tenant building.
Correct.
Right.
But keeping in mind that that tenant still could change over time. doTERRA could sell their building to whoever, and then they may want to change it from green to purple. And so the approval stays with the property, not with the actual owner of the building. So what you approve for one owner, you may not like when the next owner comes in because they're going to change it to purple. So we want to think carefully about how to integrate that in a way that is acceptable long-term and not just for the one use. But we'll take a look at that. That's a great
Yeah,
point.
just maybe add in something that gives us a little bit of flexibility to review it based on a variety of different factors that may result in in allowing something that normally wouldn't be in the palette.
Yeah.
To keep in mind too, these are enhanced standards for strategic areas. It's not gonna be across the board commercial.
Yeah, absolutely. We can, because we're listing them in columns, we could apply that special condition to certain districts versus others. So maybe right on the prime corner, you don't want the Home Depot orange, but further down the corridor, you'd be okay with it maybe. So there's some flexibility that way as well. Thank you, Mayor.
Good example, Cedar Hills had very specific design, you have to have coining and the stone and the brick, and McDonald's came, it doesn't look like any other McDonald's I've seen.
No, it doesn't.
Fits in that look and feel they're after. So there's ways to probably work with them.
Okay, thank you. And then we have the administration chapter, and this is, again, primarily a summary of all the standards that we've presented to date, minus those that haven't been discussed as of yet. And if there's any other language needed to add here to make sure that it complies with other codes within the city, we can add that here as well. So that's a general, I actually did both the things I said I was going to do kind of at once. It's a general walkthrough of all the chapters and a general breakdown of what's in each of the chapters. I think you're going to want to take some time to review the metrics that we've suggested. We call this calibration. So without changing the whole plan, we can easily change some of these individual percentages and factors pretty easily. As you look at them, you're probably going to have questions on why did we pick 70 versus 60 or 60 versus 50%. Some of it is more art than science. It just sort of feels about right to us. But if you ask specific questions, we'll do our best to give you an answer on why we've done that. In some cases, the percentages are the way they are because they're impacted by one of the other requirements somewhere else, and it makes sense to adjust both at the same time. And so we can help you through that as well as you come up with questions. I'm happy to answer kind of general questions, or if you have specific ones, we'll do our best to answer those as well.
Just, I noticed as you're going through, there was nothing really, I think it was one of the sections that's not shown, where you're talking about exterior architecture, or is landscaping part of this at all, or is that a different, completely different
It's not
animal?
landscaping, but it's more corner amenities or little plaza amenities, that's kind of what they'll get into.
Okay, so landscaping standards, that's something different that we can address later if we want to reduce grass
Yeah,
and stuff like that.
So the city would put those in place then as far as,
yeah, we're gonna be working on that this year is updating our landscape, requirements.
So that's like the enhanced corner treatment that you're talking about in here?
Yes, so what we might want to do is talk about maybe like benches or planters.
I see.
Like, I think on the buildings that face a corner, I think they call out some pavement differences, like,
Yeah.
a stamped concrete or a paver. I think you call that out in one of the,
Yeah, this picture's got a little bit of that, where you have a little bit of space out there for maybe waiting to enter a restaurant, a seat, a bench, a little bit of a planter. And again, we're not trying to duplicate the landscape standards because they're in a different section, but say if you're on a corner and you're in this commercial area, we'd really like you to have some amenities out there.
Kelly, that was something that I was just, thanks for bringing that up, Scott. I was gonna mention just some standards I've seen call out a specific section on furnishings and site furnishings. So that'll be, the benches, the chairs. So one I saw, for example, said, each project shall provide one outdoor bench per small building of 20,000 square feet or smaller. So some of them get really specific.
Yeah.
And, or table seating, or bike racks, so many stalls of cars.
Yep.
Is there anything in here that we're discussing in regards to making sure that the connectivity and pedestrian-friendly elements are a focus as well?
We talked about that a bit. How land use develops in these districts is already governed under existing code. And so there's only so far we can go with these guidelines because we're focusing really on the building look and feel themselves. So there's a few things that we can do, but unless we go back and start adjusting the base zone, we're a little bit limited
What
in
is
some
the
regard.
sidewalk width right now that it's calling for?
So we do have, let me see if I can find it quickly. Is that in the placement section, I think, sidewalk width?
I'm not sure we dictate sidewalk width.
We have a setback.
Right, yeah.
So what we have is
Page 6.
page 6.
It
Yes.
says either landscape, patio space, or sidewalk space. Were you
Yep.
talking about front setbacks?
So with the setback, we're talking about the setback from the property line, which is generally at the back, or maybe it's 1 foot behind the sidewalk. If we're allowing the building to be very close to that setback, the sidewalk width wouldn't be much wider than typical. So what we've got is, in many places, the setback's a little bit further back from the actual property line so that we can require or give flexibility to how wide that sidewalk would be. And that could be so we have room to add planters or additional benches, light poles. We've tried to add that flexibility so that in the right districts, you do get that wider setback. And part of that would be on the city property, part of it would be on the landowner's property. So unless you pushed your curb further out from the property line, you'd have to kind of have half and half on the sidewalk, if I'm saying that correctly.
Yeah, so right now, just generally, we require a 4-foot sidewalk. If there's parking next to the sidewalk, then we require a 5-foot sidewalk.
Yeah, so you could go a 10-foot sidewalk if the building is then at least 5 foot back from the property line. And the reason we would also do that is because if they had an awning, we wouldn't want that awning protruding over this city right away.
Exactly, that's, so that, when we were talking about entries and trying to dress up entries a little more, what I've seen is usually, in some instances, like a 6-foot minimum there in front of the building, and it just creates some of that
Yeah.
engagement space a little bit more too.
Yeah, and what you can also do, I think we've got a provision in here for, let's say you've got a 10-foot setback. Some of the building could also maybe be 12 or 13 feet, provided a little articulation, and it could be a little space for an extra bench or a little bit of a dining area, just to give a little bit of flexibility to that front space as well. If I'm not mistaken, is that right? Okay.
And we can discuss sidewalks some more.
Yeah, we can do that. Okay, great question. Was there a question? Okay. Any other thoughts that you'd like to share with us? If not, I know we'll give you this as some homework to review in a little bit more detail, and I know how long is, a couple weeks or a month, whatever you think you need.
Could we have any comments back by next planning commission meeting?
I have a question. So when would you add like 2 more columns for 700 North State and 200 South State? Would those be columns that you guys decide you want to add as areas with these sort of guidelines?
We would probably just say 400 north / 700 north
/ 200 South State, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we try to give you a flexible format, so
Yeah.
as you add more districts in the future, you could add them to the table.
Yeah, I see that. That's cool.
And amend amend it and re-adopt it.
I've been thinking about the 400 North and why it's there. I mean, we've got 2 very historic buildings there. They're on the registry. We have a church. I don't think there's gonna be a lot of change there, or that we want a lot of change there. Just curious why that's on there, right? You got Los Hermanos building, which is on the Lindon Historic Registry, the Pizza Factory, which is on the Lindon, historic. We do have where the old Colmore was, it used to be on the registry, but just curious.
But there is a fair amount on that corner that.
There's the corner and,
could be
Carson's
developed.
property there.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the existing,
It's supposed to master plan and punch through that too.
yeah, is it the
That
existing
goes
master
through-
plan? I
that
think
goes
does
through.
show it as a node, if I'm not mistaken.
No, but most of what's shown's on the east side and,
Yeah,
and
I
right
mean-
in the commercial.
If it punches through, all there is the church and.
It is a small,
There's not much.
it's not much.
Not much.
Mainly it would be the,
Acerson property, yeah.
Acerson's property.
The reason why this was identified is because in the current general plan, it also calls it out as a node already. So we were staying with that.
Something I don't think is gonna be built very much there. I mean, there's the one corner lot, but I don't know if we wanna try to match more what's there of the historic than.
Yeah, the other nodes won't be, like the 700 North and State, that's kind of all filled up as well, but those buildings on the east side of State Street are starting to get older. You got that scrapbooking,
Yeah.
repair business, you've got a pawn shop, and so as those.
Yeah.
Turnover,
decide to
yeah.
redevelop, there's a chance to upgrade
Right.
right there.
You got a bank and a gas station on 2 corners. But yeah, if opportunities came, it'd be nice to make a statement there.
Right.
I think it looks really, really good. I mean, there may be a few changes that have to be made or suggestions but gosh, if we could, especially 700 North, have it developed that way, it would certainly be a wonderful gateway to our city.
Okay, well, thank you for that feedback, we appreciate it, and we'll look forward to seeing what your questions and comments are, and we'll maybe be back soon to give you a final presentation.
I was just wanted to say, Councilmember Powell has a great eye for design too. I don't know if she has any comments tonight.
I've made little quiet ones, but people were saying the same thing, so I just let it be said up here. So a lot of consistency in their concerns and thoughts, and appreciation for what you've done. So just a lot of good things in this. Thank you.
Appreciate that, thank you. Okay. Well, enjoy the rest of your evening.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being with us. So now, when this is, when they come back, present again, will that be to the full planning commission or, okay?
Yes, so
Okay, so you will
we'll
include
schedule it
all
for a
of us
public
on that.
hearing next time, and
Okay,
we'll make a final presentation to you guys, let the public comment, and then let you consider it, and see when you want to move it on to the city council.
okay, because I knew this afternoon when we were going back and forth with emails, you talked about a certain, committee that you were going to present to, and then decided to go with the full planning commission, and so that's why I asked that question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mike and Rob and Scott, Steve, and our elected officials are on that committee, and it just worked out better tonight, and so we're like, let's just throw it into planning commission.
Okay, well, that's great. And thank you to Randy and Carolyn for being here with us. That's nice for you to be here. Appreciate it.
I love sitting here and looking at all of you in action.
We mostly were listening.
You probably missed your soft chair.
There was a reason we didn't want to move down there. Well, let Mike go ahead. Unless, the only things left on our agenda would be planning commissioners, if you have any thing that you would like to bring up this evening.
Two real quick. One is, I think my wife sent an email, but just to emphasize again that there's starting to be construction traffic on 570 again.
And I did hear back from the developer today, and they are getting closer to needing to make that connection, those utility connections, I guess, on 570, and then do the new curb gutter and sidewalk on 570. So they said that there will be some construction trucks, but I've asked them that they give me a heads up a week before so that I can notify the residents that they will be there that day. So, I haven't reported that back yet.
And the only other thing is, I've been thinking about my term, and I think I've pretty well come to the conclusion this will be my last term, because I just believe in giving other people. Have we ever considered putting a term limit on commissioners? Yeah, I just don't, I just wonder sometimes. I know I've talked to people in Vineyard and other places where they do have limits, just to allow other people to serve. It's just something I thought, I don't know if it's ever been discussed or if the council wants to discuss it. Not that I'm unhappy with anybody on the planning commission, they can serve as long as they want, but there is just this idea of
Spreading it around.
Spreading it around, letting a lot of people serve. So that was just something that came to me. For me, I think 3 terms is, that's almost 10 years. That's a long time, and just wondered if that was ever considered or could be considered.
It's talked about a lot more, but never anything's done on elected officials making the laws. Enforcement, I've never even heard it brought up before, but it's a good, valid point.
Just a thought to think about if we want to ever put that on as a discussion item.
We need to make a rule or a law about it. You should just step down and let somebody else serve. You don't need someone to tell you to do that. If you want to spread it around, if you're done.
Well,
and if you have that mindset of
Right,
let somebody else serve.
And when you're serving at the will of whoever appointed you, they can always ask you to sit down.
That's right.
Too.
Yeah.
We could all be asked to step down tomorrow.
Yeah, and you're always riding a fine line, Mike. You
That's
might be.
right.
It's like self-selecting. It's like saying, okay, I'm going to run for office and I'm not going to do it for the rest of my life. We should be a little more cognizant about that. I think it's a good point.
It is a good point, but, and I'm gonna say something that hopefully everybody doesn't read anything into. But planning commission, over the years, we've had people serve it on the planning commission that didn't know crap from Shinola. And anyway, anyway, I don't know if, maybe we'd never run out of good people, so I'm welcome to do whatever they wanna do, but there's a danger, and the danger really more comes when you get people, lay people that don't wanna learn and don't wanna, really understand planning and zoning and, we've had some experience in that too.
Come through vetting, though. A little more of a
Yeah, I'm
vetting
just
process.
yeah.
Yeah, I get your point, though.
Yeah.
Right. There's some intricacies about it, and if
Yeah.
someone doesn't care, then that
Yeah.
it's,
I appreciate what you bring up, Steve, and I think that would fix a lot of things in Washington if there were term limits. And, I think that's a discussion that would be interesting to have with the council about, do you want to have term limits even on our positions as well? I mean.
We've talked about that.
Yeah, but I agree with your point, Mike, as well, where this body is not really so much a legislative body. You're, kind of vetting the things that come forward, and then you're an advisory to us. So I love having people that are seasoned here, as well as new ones willing to put in the legwork to really wrap their heads around what's going on.
I think it's an important balance,
Yeah.
that we've achieved.
And I still have 2.5 years of my term, so I'm not stepping down right now, but, we'll see, but.
Hey, on this far sports court, I didn't see anything wrong with that. But on the other hand, I think when somebody just does something without going and following the codes, they deserve a little bit of heat. I almost felt like we were apologetic to him, and I think people need to understand we have codes and everything for a reason. And they need to come to you to get the proper, building permits or whatever it is that they do.
Can you make a comment?
Yeah.
That thought, or something like that, occurred to me during this process. I hate to have anyone have to come to the city and dig through a pile of paperwork to find out if their little project meets this and that. Could something be sent out in a newsletter once a year to remind people?
All they have to do is call staff, isn't it?
Remind people of that there are codes and there are setbacks and so forth, just to refresh their mind. Rather than, then just go ahead and do it.
I think that's a great idea. We have other instances where people have finished an accessory apartment and then they're upset they don't get an occupancy permit. And they're like, wait, I was supposed to have,
Good idea.
things reviewed. And so maybe just saying, hey, if you're, by the way, just like you call blue stakes, if you're gonna do a project on your property, you need to talk to the city if you're planning a new project.
Maybe
Inside or
when we
outside.
vote, have a couple of signs there, there's a number of ways of looking at it or trying to tackle it.
Yeah, maybe just put it top of mind for people like, hey, you thinking about building a sport court or an outbuilding or something like that? Hey, make sure it's compliant.
Check with the city. see
Yeah.
what requirements are and so forth before you jump in and then get in trouble.
I think it's interesting to try to figure out what is required. I mean, I had no clue we had to get a new furnace, but that required a building permit from the city. I mean, my contractor knew that, and so they got a permit,
Roofing does too.
and they
You're
come and
supposed to inspect the
inspected it, but I would have no clue that was a requirement, right? That they should come and do that, and so.
We actually don't require one for like a re-roof.
For a roof, you don't require in Lindon?
I don't think so, not in
A lot of,
Lindon.
a lot
But
of
when I was
municipalities
with
wanna look
South
at
Salt
the,
Lake, they did.
they
Yeah.
wanna see the nail pattern and that kind of
Yep.
thing.
And I think for a furnace, the reason they do that is for the electrical connection.
The gas
Inspection.
connection stuff, it makes sense, you know, they made sure the gas catch, but I would have never thought of that, you know, myself, that that's required, so. I think that's one of the problems, right? If I go build a shed in my backyard, I know there's a certain, once I make it so big, I have to get a building permit, but I wouldn't know what that was, and if I made it 2 feet too big, I guess until someone complained, I don't know.
I think Mary and I could start doing, you know, in the newsletter, try to do a quick education piece on different things like that.
How many of you ever read the monthly newsletter, though?
I do.
Does that come in the utility bill? Is that
Well,
what-
and you get it
'cause I
by
don't-
email too.
By email.
It doesn't come in the utility bill.
No,
Yeah, I
you get
don't
it by
see it.
email.
I do see that on the city Facebook page.
Yeah.
Generally.
Yeah.
That's a good source.
Even though we all know that more than likely the people who need it are the people who don't read it.
That's true.
But by putting it out there, that negates us from not trying to be as vocal as possible and educating the public, so.
I think we did a post last week on drones with the Walmart drones. Maybe if we put drone in front of everything, we'll get lots of readers and comments, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had like 90 likes, so.
Oh, did you?
So is that 1 mile as the crow flies? Because I'm 1.1 mile by driving, so I'm wondering if I can
You
order
can go to
a
their
loaf of
drone
bread.
up website, put in your address and see if you're eligible. There,
The thing is that she sent an employee out there to watch it drop, so that's, you're in that beta phase right now, that you not only get a drone, you get an employee.
Yeah.
As much as it goes down, as they, you know, make sure everything's going proper in this first phase here.
and they're working with the FAA to try to do 3 miles, so.
Yikes.
Their ultimate hope is that, you know, it picks up a package, takes it to a home in Lindon, that goes to Orem, picks up another package, drops it off someplace in Orem, comes back to Lindon, picks another package up.
Picks
So,
up somebody's small dog by accident. Is that gonna happen?
I did ask that if what if a dog grabbed the cord, you know, that's dropping and it releases, the cord releases.
It drops the package on the dog. Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Less than 10 pounds, so.
Oh, my gosh.
Well, Crumble Cookies is ready to sign up too. Are they?
Michael, we now have an enforcement office, or
We do now. It's,
are they actively, is that what caught this sports court, or what?
no,
'Cause he was
Mr.
selling his
Forrest-
house.
Peggy buyer,
Buyer.
due diligence, yeah.
Higher.
So is he actively going throughout the city looking for things, or waiting for a complaint?
He's probably got a list you've already given him.
yeah, he is actively, he's,
For more nuisance things than zoning violations,
Right.
really.
he's worked with a lot of people to remove their stored vehicle off the street.
Well, I'm sure getting a lot of my neighbors still complaining about Fourth and Locust.
Yeah.
That's,
As you know,
He has worked with them, but, there was
I
only
see
so
since
much.
he's been working with them, it's got worse.
I don't think a zoning officer that was driving around really looking for something would have even picked up on that.
No, probably not.
especially if they're not local,
Huh?
right? If they don't live, they're not a resident of Lindon, they're not gonna,
Well, we hadn't for, you know, it was built in 2020, we didn't pick up on anything. It's just
I mean, like
somewhat.
I say, I drive by there 4 times a day and,
I wasn't talking about that, I was talking
Oh.
about Fourth and North.
oh, I see, yeah.
Locust,
Fourth North and Locust over on the east side.
Yeah.
north side, yeah.
So
East side of
has
State
Fourth
Street.
North ever come to you about the additional dwelling they had? They initially divided it for two homes there.
Which
Correct.
one?
Yes, there's 2 lots.
There's
They
2
said.
lots there. We divided it into 2 lots.
Oh,
Another sibling that,
yeah. The one sister brought in a manufactured home. The other one wants a stick frame home, but can't afford it right now, and so.
So they, okay.
So,
I don't think anyone else has
okay.
any other comments, so it's.
maybe just one real quick. I thought it was interesting today. I was on the multiple listing service, and are they calling it Tilly Court behind the?
Mm-hmm.
So I saw that they had some under contract. I didn't check the solds, but I was good to see, because we're in kind of a challenging market. But there were a few that were under contract, and I'm not sure when they're expecting occupancy on that, but
Which one are you
Where
talking
were you
about?
referring to?
Behind Lindon Nursery.
Linden Nursery.
Jeff Southard's project.
I just think it's kind of cool to see it coming to, and, you know,
Look,
occupancy and.
Carolyn mentioned this to me, and so I went down and looked at that. One of the things I was pretty disappointed on that is, you know, one of the big draws on that was that people would have, you know, their own space in their backyard, you know. And those backyards are really steep, so I'm not sure how those would be used.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we need to somehow re-clarify that how this 7-foot wall, the 7-foot wall must rise from the foundation of the first floor or something, so it doesn't, they can't sit there and put the 7-foot wall down here and build it up on the top. I mean, it was an oversight, I think, on our part as far as that. We're just looking at it from bird's view. Yeah, it looks like it's gonna be good, but not until you see it. Especially there are some of them that are pretty bad.
Well, and I think one of the issues with that one is they installed the fencing first so that the neighbors wouldn't see, you know, all the construction, but then they built up the site to meet the utility requirements. So the sewers flowed and everything, and then when they built the site up, they were above their fence almost. So,
Yeah, so it's just something we need to be aware of and make sure that doesn't happen in the future.
yeah.
On any property that, you know, that we require that fencing on. That could be any commercial against residential property in the future that we need to be aware of where they measure the height of the wall from, the base of the height of the wall.
Because they can see right down over
Yeah,
that.
if it's designed to be a 7-foot wall, that 7-foot wall should be from the slab on the first project, yeah. You know, that's, or grade, you know, main floor grade or something.
Thank you for being here with us. Okay, I think that's it.
Just a couple things. We do need to elect a chair and vice chair for 2023. I didn't put it on this meeting because usually we like to have everybody here, and then sometimes in January it doesn't seem like we quite have everybody because we've been like February and March before when we've actually elected a new chair and vice chair. So
Yeah, it seems like it was just yesterday.
It was.
are you okay if we schedule that for the next meeting?
Yeah.
24th?
Uh-huh.
I won't be here on the 24th, but
Good, you're the president.
Yeah, that's a good heads up.
And then for the next meeting, we've got 2 flag lot subdivisions coming to you possibly. We're waiting on them to provide some plans to us. And then we'll do it, there's plans in place to look at constructing a building over at the cemetery. One little office and a couple bays for equipment. And so we're gonna bring that design to you guys.
I mean, over the cemetery.
Oh, at the cemetery.
Yeah,
At
it's
the
like,
cemetery.
Yeah, so where they can put the dump truck and the Bobcat, so, it's just out of the way. They can have, you know, the example was also given, so after they, dig the grave, the employees can go in the office and wait instead of, you know, standing there with their shovels waiting to fill the hole, and it's a little more respectful and.
Is that the restroom would be part of that facility?
Yes.
Because I know it's already plumbed, for lack of a better term. The
it's a good idea.
infrastructure's there for a restroom
Yes.
in the back
So, you know,
section.
it's nice, I asked Jared College if he would be willing to give an easement at the end of 150 to attach a path to open, and they are working with staff right
A
now.
path, just a walking path?
Kind of like the same easement I have in my cul-de-sac that can connect
Oh, yes.
that cul-de-sac to the cemetery.
Does our cemetery have a sexton?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
So they could have their office there too. I mean.
Well, we
or
don't,
what-
yeah,
Not full-time?
no.
Public Works
Oh,
has oversight, so technically one is the sexton, but
So it's gonna go right here,
Oh, it disconnected somehow.
well, sorry, it'll go on that south side of the property.
Correct.
So,
Where the plumb piping is.
yeah.
Yeah, I know, I see them, they dig a hole, they have to drive the tractors away, and a couple hours later, they have to drive the tractors back.
It'd be nice to get the equipment undercover.
Yeah.
But no, we don't need a full-time sexton.
How many lots are left in that cemetery?
Well, it's getting closer to capacity on the section we have, but the city has that entire field right
Okay.
there as future cemetery. The city owns that, and right now it's leased to, is it Juan who?
Chavez Farms.
Mm-hmm.
Farms, yeah, who farms it, but, so there would be a little path going from the cul-de-sac, a little easement there at the end of the cul-de-sac, long stream, connecting the cemetery, so folks could come and, walk up to church or come up to the park, without having to go around the whole other.
It's nice.
And the building, you could probably show them the,
Building would be right.
Yeah, it'll be right here.
Okay. And when, they just need to get approval to start on that right away?
I don't know if it's budgeted yet, is it?
it was in Public Works meeting.
Okay, so yeah, just the design, that's what you're approving is
Okay.
the
Is it
design.
basically just storage? Storage in a restroom is basically what it is?
Office?
Kind of garage and,
Future office.
garage, office, and I don't know if,
Dane was the Palmer Mayor Dane was the architect on it. It looks pretty nice. Have you seen it? No, I haven't.
I've got it up here too.
So the access will be through the cemetery to get to it.
Yes.
I'll pull it up real quick so you can see it. So office, restroom, garage, and then an awning over, I think this is material area. And then that's what it'll look like.
So when they do that, are they gonna deal with the wall? Cause right now, there's no wall, concrete wall along that
believe-
south line. Seems
Yeah, I
like
don't
they
know
would
if we-
probably want to do something with that wall at that time rather than,
Yeah. We'll look at that. I'll bring that up.
yeah, 'cause especially if you're gonna be putting a walking path, there would have to be an access or a gate or something through that wall when you work it out with Jared.
Would you think if they go to
Okay.
the expense to put a restroom there, that it'd be open to the public?
Yeah.
That'd be a nuisance or?
I think, I think the restroom, his question to me, what I think about the nuisance, the open public restrooms, I think it'd be the same as probably Pioneer Park or something, it
I
automatically.
just wondering if we go to
walks.
the expense of a restroom there, do they ever have a public restroom in a cemetery? And would that be a dual use or purpose, just the restroom part of it? I mean, there's few people that, now, I don't go there that often, but when I do, it seems like I seem to see the same people there sitting there and whatever, anyway, if we're gonna go to the expense of a restroom, should it be public?
Oh, it is.
Oh, it will be, okay.
Yes.
It's a public, no,
Oh,
it's a
okay.
public restroom.
Good.
That's why I say, as far as the nuisance, I think we'd just do it like Pioneer
It's
Park or
not just for
something.
the guys standing around waiting to
No,
fill the
no,
hole.
no, it's, no.
It's for visitors.
Yeah, okay, good,
Yep.
good. I'm on board.
Because the cemetery is considered public, right? So,
Yeah.
I think we're done.
yeah,
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
so moved.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next meeting on the 24th, right?
Right.
Can I say I'm just disappointed we have a finance meeting to do as fast as possible? Just love being at this meeting, ours was like this, doesn't it?
Only because this one had one item on the agenda.